mother as the immanent divine and mentioned that the psychic principle is the mother, that the mother is inside all of us. It brought to mind for me a couple of things. You may recall many years ago, some 30 years ago, you had put forth the thesis that Christ is the psychic avatar, that he sort of represented the psychic being of all humanity, and that's how he was able to make his sacrifice. And then I thought of the passage from Savitri that begins with, "Hard is the world Redeemer's heavy task," which I believe that section kind of points to the Christ principle. And I'm wondering how you can tie these three threads of our discussion to relate it to the mother as the immanent divine.
Yeah, thank you, Prapanna. Yeah, so it's easy to fall into a sectarian rut, so to say, but if we take it in a universal way, and by that, there have been theosophical teachers and anthroposophical teacher.
That society that you gave that talk.
Right.
Yeah.
So they look at world history, and that's an interesting thing about world history. There was no world history until the 20th century, because people had their own histories and their own cultural histories, and they took that to be the truth. But now we can see that people have had different kinds of cultural histories, and some people began trying to make sense of the whole. And Theosophy was one of those movements. And so they have a place for Buddha, and they have a place for Krishna, and they have a place for Christ, and they have a place for Sophia as well. But even that, I think, is too rigid a structure, because somewhere they're also doing their own privileging. They kind of make everybody else subordinate to one particular principle. So that's the fear. But if we look at it from the viewpoint that even when we talk about the avatar, that there are plural avatars, there are principles, divine principles, or divine truths that get embodied sometimes, and they represent some principle, to a much greater extent than what we manifest, and that helps us to bring to the front that particular aspect. From that point of view, I think Sri Aurobindo says in another quote, not that the heavy is the world Redeemer's task is a very profound and puts a really divine content to the idea of the Christ avatar. Because the Indian tradition, just like it doesn't have the idea of a Shakti avatar, doesn't have the idea of a suffering avatar either. And that's what he does in that passage. He's showing you the aspect of the avatar as a human being who suffers, and that refers to the life of Christ in that sense. So I would say that there's another place where he says Christ from his cross humanized Europe, right? Yeah. So it's almost as if the psychic influence was made universal through that life in a section of humanity that didn't express that in a universal way in that sense. So one could say that the mission of that kind of avatar is to help bring the psychic further to the front. And so it does that work and goes, but the influence stays. So from that point of view, we could say that just as we are talking about the mother bridges the father and the son, the Christ from that point of view is the avatar of the Son of God, right? is in that sense the psychic avatar because it represents the psychic being in the principle of the individual. But that's like, I talk about Ganesha, but that particular avatar is also made, as it were, of the substance of the Divine Mother. So, there's a place where the mother is asked, what is the relationship, or what is your relationship to Shiva? This is, have you seen this? And she says, why, of course, he's my son.
Oh, yes.
you know. So it is this idea that the father is really the son because the father is contained by the mother and given birth to by the mother. So I think the psychic being, if you talk about Christ as a psychic avatar, even the kind of substance of that psychic avatar is really the mother's own substance.
So why wasn't Christ a woman?
Well, it could be that it's the psychic principle, which is again following this male-female idea. It's like an essence, while the qualities that are expressed are the feminine qualities. Again, the same thing you find in Christianity. There's been a degree of suppression over time, more after the Reformation, even more of the female, of the feminine.
Right.
But if you go to anthroposophy, for example, in the importance of Sophia, Steiner actually says that anthroposophy is actually based on anthroposophia. Yeah, and that's the image of the future, he says. Anthroposophia is what is to be born in the future, is already present, he's saying. And we embody anthroposophia. And that is, the inner Christ becomes the collective anthroposophia, according to his teaching. Okay, I'm not sure how far we'll get into Savitri at the rate at which we are going, but maybe we'll make that the next workshop. So we were talking about the three aspects of the mother: the transcendent, the universal, and the individual. And somebody already referred to the universal aspect as the four Mahashaktis, right? Which he talks about in the book The Mother, Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. But in Savitri, interestingly, he refers to three soul forces. So, both from the viewpoint that Sri Aurobindo is not creating a rigid structure, he kind of changes his own wording and his own ideas if you look at different texts. But also from the viewpoint that the four cosmic Mahashaktis in their sacrifice get reduced in a way. There's a reduction. Not only a reduction in number, but a reduction in power. And that's what the Shaktis of Savitri as a universal mother show us. He says the cosmic powers also feature in Savitri. The Divine Mother has accepted and subjected herself to the ignorance, and these are the forms we encounter in Savitri as the triple soul forces. These powers are at work constantly and ceaselessly for the manifestation of the divine here. But subject to the dividing ignorance and falsehood, they are unable to achieve a definitive victory of the divine or to transform the ignorance, because they do not represent the integrality of the Divine Mother that Savitri brings as an incarnation or avatar of the Supreme Shakti. So each one of them is partial and they are tied to their negative potential. Each one of them comes with a kind of ego limitation that pops up every time they express their power. uh, the shadow uh, appears and gives its own negative view of that particular aspect. Uh, this is the self-presentation of the mother, which Sri Aurobindo refers to as her individual aspect. The avataric aspect is her individual aspect. Of course, in an individualized form, the mother has entered into each of us. And this is the essence that I was referring to, that the mother is born as the psychic being in each of us. It is she who is individualized in us as the psychic being, the soul personality. This represents the individual becoming of the Supreme Mother. The Gita refers to it as Para Prakritir Jiva Bhuta. You see, this is the phrase that Sri Aurobindo will repeat in the essays on the Gita, that both the Supreme Being, Purushottama, and the Divine Mother, Para Prakriti, are present in the psychic being. He says the Supreme Purusha has portioned itself. So it's like an atom of the Supreme Purusha. Again, we must understand atom as a potential of the whole, or infinite potential is in each atom, but it is expressing a part of its potential. And then you have the Divine Mother who is bringing those potential into dynamic becoming. So he points to the two phrases. One is Amsa Sanatana, which Krishna is saying that of the Purushottama, Supreme Person, each soul is a eternal portion, Amsa Sanatana. But he's also saying that each soul is a individual becoming of the Supreme Mother, of the Para Prakriti Jiva Bhuta, becoming a life form of the Supreme Mother. So it's both these. It's a portion of the Purusha and it's a becoming of the Prakriti. See, it's the dynamic unfolding of the potential of that portion, so to say. This is why, yeah.
What was an atom of the divine? I missed it.
Amsa Sanatana means an eternal portion. Amsa is like a portion. It's like a fragment or a part, an atom.
And what was that? That
was of the supreme, the psychic being.
Thank you.
The Purusha aspect of the psychic being. You see, this is a very important point actually, that the integration of the integral yoga begins at the level of the psychic being. That's the first level of the integration, because the psychic already carries in it the integration of Purusha and Prakriti. It is an eternal portion of the Purusha and a self-becoming of the Prakriti. This is why our proper relationship to her is that of a child to its mother. But this qualitative, individualized immanence is subject to evolution towards universality and integrality. See, that's the becoming. What is the self-becoming of the Divine Mother in each of us? It's to take a set of potential and move them towards universality and integrality. That's what's happening in our life and from life to life. See? But these future becomings to which each of us belongs is sometimes manifest in a full form. And that is the avatar. This is what we were saying, that the archetype itself is manifest sometimes. But this qualitative, individualized immanence is subject to evolution towards universality and integrality, and in certain cases, the mother represents herself in a more substantial way, qualitatively closer to her divine or goddess forms. This is the idea of the vibhuti and the avatar. See, and this is what we were just discussing some time back, that even naturally speaking, there is this unequal distribution of forces because the divine is divine in each person, no less divine. It's completely divine, but expresses different kinds and degrees, both kinds and degrees of its own qualities to create a manifestation. So, in that sense, sometimes it comes with all its qualities and then creates a certain type of relation in which we see that as our own future, so to say. These are the human beings who stand head and shoulders above other human beings. They manifest to achieve something special for the divine manifestation. They are what Sri Aurobindo has called the vibhutis. And further, on very rare occasions, the Divine Mother embodies her consciousness in its integral entirety. So, this is a kind of difference between the cosmic aspects that stand behind some forms and the integral manifestation, as it were. This is the incarnation, the Shakti avatar that we considered earlier. Savitri is such a Shakti avatar. She brings the power out of the unmanifest to transform the ignorance, to act within it in a greater way than the cosmic Mahashaktis can. And this is really a very critical point in Sri Aurobindo's presentation of the mother, because this is what he's saying is the opportunity that we are given. And again, it seems like an article of faith. And that's the reason why it's for those who want to accept that particular idea and resonate with it. If they don't need it. See, Sri Aurobindo's teaching stands on its own. Somebody can follow that teaching without accepting either Sri Aurobindo or the mother as anybody. See, Sri Aurobindo's teaching can be followed in many ways. And that's why he says in a place that the fulfillment of the integral yoga is as when there are as many integral yogas as there are human beings. But also Sri Aurobindo's teaching affords some special opportunities for those who resonate with them. And one of them is to accept the mother as the divine mother, to accept, to see, to enter into relationship with, to bring into one's consciousness the Shakti avatar, because that is a very special opportunity, because that brings into the physical the possibilities of our own future. Not possible in that sense if we just have the image in our minds and grow towards it, but nothing wrong with that. And that could be the exact purpose of any particular person's soul. The divine gives innumerable paths, every one of them equally true and equally necessary for that person. So we do have this kind of understanding that, in like he's saying, Savitri is a Shakti mother, avatar. The mother is a Shakti avatar. She manifests something from the future. She cannot be, described or contained by what has appeared so far. There is something mysterious and beyond whatever we can determine from the past. There is the indeterminate in her. And if we relate to her in that way, we come into contact with that. So long as we relate to her as a predictable form, which is what many people do, You find books and books written about their relationship with the mother. There may be something unpredictable there, but it's always within the realm of the unknown, not within the realm of the unknowable. It's all about she was happy because I did this, she was sad because I did that, as if it matters. There is no power to that kind of relationship. To, to come into contact with the power of the mother's incarnation is to see that she's bringing into force, bringing into presence something from the future. And that unpredictable mystery is what you're in contact with. So that is the Shakti avatar.
Devashi?
Yes.
What was that wonderful quote? I missed the beginning of it. Something about as there are as many approaches to integral yoga as there are human beings. What was the rest of it?
Yeah, it comes from the Four Aids, the chapter, the Four Aids. And he's referring, at first he begins by referring to Vivekananda and his idea of universal religion. He says, Vivekananda said that religion will reach its fulfillment when there are as many religions as there are human beings. Well, one can say the same thing about the integral yoga.
Thank you.
So she brings the power out of the unmanifest to transform the ignorance, to act within it in a greater way than the cosmic Mahashaktis can. This is what we see in Savitri, right? She's in search for her soul. And she meets one after the other these these three soul forces. And each one represents itself to her as her true soul. And as soon as that one has spoken, the shadow speaks. And that's how she knows that this is not my true soul. Because it always comes with its own shadow, its duality that cannot be overcome by this power. So she encounters three of them and moves further and actually exceeds the cosmic scope. That's why she goes into this, meets a home, it's kind of a sky home, as she points out, burning somewhere outside the entire manifestation, as it were. That's her soul. It's a transcendental soul bringing from the future something into this life. We can ask, what is this special power that the integral Divine Mother contains? This is sort of related to what Charles was saying, that these are the four Mahashaktis, but there are all these Shaktis that have not yet manifested because we are not yet ready for them. And one of them, he says, is the mother of true Ananda, I think he says, the aspect of true Ananda. And that, in a sense, is this, that becomes the power of divine love in the creation. It has manifested, and the mother says at a certain time that it's in her. She is the avatar of that. But it's almost as if she can't bring it fully to the front until everybody is ready, or there's a critical degree of receptivity for it. What is the essence of this mother power? So we come to this point.
I think through her words she does.
Yeah, it's always there, but I think the fullness of that, she also says at a certain point that it had manifest at a certain point, and then it withdrew.
That's what I
Wasn't
remember
that-
from the agenda.
Yeah.
Like the 1968,
46.
69 period.
Maybe, I'm not sure. Well, maybe 68, 69.
It was
maybe
in
around there.
1946.
No, this is a later. The one that Ananda is talking about is happening. She talks about it in the agenda. It's happening later. She actually refers to Sri Aurobindo's passage about the incarnation that have not come, And she said, in fact, one of them had appeared, had manifested, but has gone back because people are not ready.
It's interesting that you mention that because I think there were two things. One is since I got married and my wife, and she had Kuan Yin, which seems to somehow in our pantheon of our house seems to have a very prominent because it has that love aspect, that purity, and there isn't anything that is clear from the Indian pantheon that comes that way. And it also human cycle, he talks about the French Revolution, that fraternity, brotherhood, the missing leg. There's the ananda, there's that sense of the love, which hasn't been manifested. There's also why he said why communism and didn't work and why Catholic. It's like you need all three parts. It's like the love. So we say love is all you need, right?
Yeah.
Right.
True.
Well, that is kind of.
It's true, actually.
It's very true. So it's a huge part of. This.
No, he's going to point to the partial manifestation of that as Radha, the consort of Krishna, which was also short-lived. Because even in Krishna's life, it's only when he's young, and before he goes to Mathura, that Radha has any place in it. After that, she disappears from his life.
I wondered about that.
Yeah.
But you started out by saying only love can conquer death.
Yeah.
And I remember her saying that on the earthly plane, a truth field has to be created first, because if divine love descended in how it is now, it would shatter everything.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's maybe the
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. That's the preparation. It's like this power can come, but first it has to prepare the ground by the universal manifestation of truth. That's why the supermind becomes so important for Sri Aurobindo. But the mother comes to bring that power and organize the possibility.
So, are you saying Radha was that fourth power that came and then went back?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to read a passage where the mother is actually giving that kind of content to Radha in her Radha's prayer. But to what extent that actually manifested, it's a question.
So at some point in here, there won't be death in the future. Is that what the supermind manifestation is going to do?
So the kind of simple answer to your question in Sri Aurobindo's teaching would be yes. The complex answer would be it depends on us. It's not so much that the supermind will do it, but what we allow the supermind to do through us. So here, the purity of love, this is what it comes to. The essence of love is most manifest in this world in the power of self-giving. The purity of love lies in its surrender. And the reason that Savitri has such a world-transcending power is because she brings an integral surrender into manifestation in her life. We find that in the Indian tradition, this kind of surrender is represented in the love between Krishna and Radha. So that's the part I was talking about. This indeed is a figure of the eternal two-in-one, of the Ishvara Shakti, the original conscious being and its own conscious force. The mother gives us the essence of this relation in her Radha's prayer. So this is an interesting history to this prayer. There was a dancer in the ashram, Purani's daughter, actually, Anuben Purani, who was enacting Radha in a skit, and went to the mother and told her that I'm going to do this And this is how I'm doing it. And she actually danced it out in front of the mother. And the mother really appreciated it, patted her, and wrote down this prayer for her to read and express when she did it. So that's the context of this prayer, which many of you have read already. O thou, and actually it kind of brings us immediately into the image of mothers meeting Sri Aurobindo in 1914. Okay. O thou, whom at first sight I knew for the Lord of my being and my God, receive my offering. Thine are all my thoughts, all my emotions, all the sentiments of my heart, all my sensations, all the movements of my life. Each cell of my body, each drop of my blood. I am absolutely and altogether thine, thine without reserve. What thou wilt of me, that I shall be. Whether thou choosest for me life or death, happiness or sorrow, pleasure or suffering, all that comes to me from thee will be welcome. Each one of thy gifts will be always for me a gift divine, bringing with it the supreme felicity. It is this kind of surrender that Savitri represents. And this power of love is what enables her ultimately to irradiate the last resistance of dead matter, death itself. It is this kind of surrender that was represented by the mother herself. So an interesting thing to think about over here, because this prayer is a very intense prayer. It's totally, integrally intense, and an intensity of surrender. So this, thou who I beheld at first sight for the Lord of my being and my God, again, there's various ways to understand this. Is it something that is exclusive in any way to a particular divine or a particular person, whoever it is, another human being, in this case another human being, but also a God? Who is it that one is addressing this to? To whom is the surrender to be made? This is the question. And Sri Aurobindo has given a direction to this question in answering who is Krishna. Who is Krishna? And he points to the fact that Krishna is better understood and first to be understood through the Gita. That the intensity of love also is to be made to that being who is the universal being, who is the teacher of the world. That is the Krishna that gives the fulfillment to the integral surrender. Because there is a narrow approach to Krishna, which is also very powerful. All the Vaishnava traditions take Krishna in that way. But it relates to what you were saying, Swaha, about the necessity for the manifestation of the supermind, of the universal, of the one in the many, seen in the divine, towards which one makes one surrender. This is why we may see Savitri as the internal biography of the mother. just as Ashwapati represents Sri Aurobindo's internal biography. We see that the mother, in her relationship with her children, with the creatures of the world, and her relationship with the Supreme Lord, manifests this power of surrender. When Sri Aurobindo was asked what he felt when he met the mother for the first time, he replied that he knew at once that the supramental manifestation was possible, because he saw in the mother an example of an integral surrender to the last atom of her body. He actually said he never thought it was possible. This is the surrender that the mother represented in her relationship with Sri Aurobindo, and that she spoke of when she said, "I am Sri Aurobindo's Shakti and the mother to all my children." The mother has equally this attitude of integral surrender towards all her children. The sadhakas and sadhikas who have accepted Sri Aurobindo's and her teaching. Beyond this, she was also equally surrendered to the evolutionary purpose of the divine in the entire cosmos. This is why she is the mother of the entire creation. As an incarnation of the Divine Mother, she surrenders herself to every being so that out of that sacrifice, the power of love may effect a complete transformation of this world. The mother says that people who turn to the teaching of Sri Aurobindo, she says that as soon as they turn to the teaching of Sri Aurobindo, she accepts them. And she says, many of them forget. They have a moment of turning, and then they forget. A little time and they're gone. She says, I never forget. If they turned even for a moment, I belong to them. And they can forget, but I won't forget. In another powerful and pregnant statement, which we've discussed already, the mother has said, "Without him I exist not, without me he is unmanifest." The he here is the Supreme Being. As the mother saw Sri Aurobindo as an avatar, the he in this statement equates the Supreme Being with Sri Aurobindo. The mother rests on the Supreme Being for her existence, but the Supreme Being rests on the mother for his manifestation. The universe and all its creatures and the progressive movement of evolution towards divinity is the act of their love, of integral and perfect surrender that will ultimately irradiate the entire ignorance and bring to birth the Supreme Divine. This is the power that Savitri represents. So this is the time image. This repeats in time. It came as Savitri. It came as the mother. And it can and will come in many lives and ultimately in all lives because they are incarnating in us. Sri Aurobindo begins by talking about who are these characters in Savitri, right? this is not a mere allegory. The characters are not personified qualities, but incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces with whom we can enter into concrete touch, and they take human bodies in order to help man and show him the way from his mortal state to a divine consciousness and immortal life. This is the power that Savitri represents, the power she demonstrates both in her relationship with the Supreme Being, in her relationship with Satyavan as the representative of humanity, and in her relationship with all the beings in her life. She bears the life of the avatar, the problems of the avatar, the humanity of the avatar, the divinity of the avatar. All this lives in that one body. We find in Savitri, Sri Aurobindo represents the life of the Divine Mother, who has taken a human body and who bears the load that all divine incarnations of the Mother must bear. That also Sri Aurobindo's collaborator, the Mother, bore. And we find in that sense this dual power of love manifest in Savitri as an incarnation of the Divine Mother. So how are we doing for time, Swa?
Still got 40 minutes.
Okay, good. So then I think let's start with a reading. And this relates to what we've already discussed about Ashwapati's contact with the Divine Mother in Book 3, Canto 2, The Adoration of the Divine Mother.
I just wanted to mention one thing.
Yes,
because,
please.
if it is relevant.
Yes, please.
That is the act of consciousness versus the fact of consciousness.
Yeah.
Like, representation versus presentation. That mind is not just a tool to represent things or all that are already here, but there is an action. So that's where what acts is that Divine Mother element.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it is actually presenting the truth.
Yes.
Not representing which is already there, but actually.
Yes. This is that thing about the future coming into birth, because what we do is represent, but if we are open to her action, then that presents. We incarnate, we embody and incarnate.
And that is happening every moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had
Yes,
about
please,
what
yes.
we had talked earlier.
Yes.
So there's sacrifice and involution, and there's sacrifice and evolution. And I wanted to know the difference.
Yeah, yeah. It's Sri Aurobindo calls it the. I think he uses the term the reverse sacrifice or the inverse sacrifice or something. So it's the divine, as he says, the divine sacrifices. And at the way we were discussing it, it's as if the one sacrifices to its potential to become many. You see, so the one fragments itself. That's the sacrifice of the Purusha, you see. Or the conscious being makes itself inconscient, unconscious, right? That's the sacrifice that creates the ground of evolution, right? That's the sacrifice of the divine. And out of that, the limited, individualized, unconscious beings that result have then to sacrifice to the opposite potential from which it came, to consciousness and unity. See? So the sacrifice of the limited to the unlimited, of the unconscious to the conscious, that is our return, reverse sacrifice, as it were. So it is these two sacrifices that are going on, and they are represented by Sri Aurobindo's symbol. You have the descending triangle and the ascending triangle. It isn't that it happened, you see, this is again, we come back to the time structure. It isn't that at a certain point in time it happened and now the reverse is happening. See, that's one way to look at it, right? That historically the cosmos began in the scientific image with a Big Bang. In that way, we think of a beginning of time in which, as it were, the divine involved itself, involuted itself, and now we are evolving in time. You see, that's an image of time. But that image is happening at every moment. That's what she was saying, right? That at every moment it's as if the divine is entering into matter, limiting itself, making itself more, unconscious. And at every moment we are calling for it to reveal more of its truth, more of its consciousness and its divinity.
So the involution is also happening progressively.
Yes.
I never thought about it.
Yes. Both the involution and the evolution are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because involution is, not only the fact of something that entered into darkness, it's also the fact of that which is illuminating the darkness. The divine is involving itself to release the potential by entering into the darkness.
As Mother says, no, that there is a screen where it is getting materialized. That there is a screen where the materialization is constantly taking place.
So the descent is the involution.
Yeah.
Descent is the evolution.
Yeah. But just like we were saying about Sri Aurobindo he's creating a kind of understandable structure by using terms in very specific ways, and he will himself sort of challenge his own structure. See, just like with the four Mahashaktis and the triple soul forces, there's one place in the life divine that we were just looking at. It's in which he's talking about two involutions. He's saying both of them are involutions in that kind of really mind-boggling passage. He says, all is involved in spirit and manifesting continuously as more and more dense possibilities of form. And all is involved in matter and manifesting greater degrees of freedom in spirit continuously. From our viewpoint, it's an involution and evolution. But from a more transcendental viewpoint, it's two involutions and two evolutions.
So if the descent didn't happen some time ago, when the world was in a much better place for the humanity to make that progress, so how it is going to happen in the near future?
Can you repeat that again?
No, I mean, the humanity, everything around the world has changed compared to how it was years ago.
Yeah.
So how is it going to make that progress?
It's continuously making progress because now there are various ways you can look at it. It's like saying a glass is either half full or half empty. So there is a view that we are descending the curve, right? Which is like we were already in the view of the yugas, right? There was already a Satya Yuga, which is given in the image of the full moon, right? You had something that was perfect. And then um, only a quarter became dark, and you had 3/4 of the moon, and then you had half the moon. And now we are in a phase where we are getting rid of the last quarter of the moon, and we'll get to the new moon, right? And then we'll start the cycle towards the full moon, right? So that's an image of the yugas, that we had a perfect past, and we are going down the curve to a very dark place, right, which is called the Kali Yuga. But you can look at the same image in another way. That is, in the beginning, we had no individuality. We were spontaneously who we were without any sense of any choice in the matter. Every obscuration of that perfection gave us more individuality. And today, it's a choice for us to become divine or to stay undivine. And that choice is the essence of freedom. And as the mother says, the two most interesting things about this universe is freedom and joy. It's the progress of freedom that is taking place. So it depends on how you're looking at it. The pluralization of individuals is in a way the fulfillment of the sacrifice of the one who wanted to know itself as many. So it's almost like turning inside out and saying each one is free, each one is God. How will it happen in the future? That is something that, to a large extent, we don't know. It's just the way the things are turning. You see, we are in a very dark time right now. From all the traditional images of Kali Yuga and all that, we are in a very, very difficult time right now. But it is also a time when our sort of power of choice is at its maximum. It's almost like the divine is saying, here, it's in your hands. I'm not there in the play anymore. Can you run your world? Answer is, yes, you can, if you are God. That's the invitation.
And it was not possible for them, so that's why I'm wondering, like, how is it possible for each of us?
Yeah, there's, not possible for, in what way? You mean perfection.
Like the descent, like to bring that consciousness onto earth. So
yeah,
that was their aim.
Oh, that way, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because again, just if you look at it in that image, the time was not right. You see, they had their own experience and they did some work and left it for the future. Because you have to come to that point of time when it is truly pluralized for that possibility to manifest. And we are at that time now. So whatever work they did was foreseeing a time like this. Again, we go back to history and the deep remembrance. It's almost as if they were foreseeing a time down the curve, and they were not doing it for their time. I don't think they were trying to achieve something and didn't achieve it. They are achieving their vision now.
Great.
Yeah, Sri Aurobindo says it. He says, I found the traces of Agastya's work. So he actually says it. He says, Agastya left his work in the higher planes. I found the traces of his work.
It's like their project had a very long time.
Yeah. They were not trying to achieve. It's not that we didn't achieve what we were trying. They were trying to achieve it when it was supposed to be achieved.
I read, I don't remember exactly which book on that, but I believe in 1950s or something they tried to make that consciousness, people to be aware of it and bring that supramental consciousness onto earth, but it didn't happen. So.
Yeah, yeah. That Sri Aurobindo says that the the that I mean, lots of people. He made a lot of hints to the fact that it was just about to happen, but particularly the Second World War threw a spanner in the works. It completely changed everything. It threw off his timeline. So yes, as far as he was concerned, I think you're talking about that past. Yes, what Mother and Sri Aurobindo came to do, um, the vision of what they could achieve changed throughout their lives. And in a way, Sri Aurobindo left his body. The mother said in 1956 that she brought down the supramental light, power, and consciousness. These are the three aspects. She's been very clear about that. Some people asked her, have you brought down the supermind? She said, what happened on that day, 29th February 1956, is the manifestation of the supramental light, consciousness, and power. These are three powers, not the whole of the supermind. But they came down to start preparing the world. And Sri Aurobindo has made it very clear. He says, I'm not interested in personal achievement. I'm not interested in what happens to the world. If the supermind comes down, it will create the conditions. So if we are to believe that, then that's happened. And the conditions are being created. And all the problems we see in the world today could be thought of as a result of that. It's exactly what's necessary.
We've been reading the Mother's Vision, and it's like right after 1956, she was much more optimistic about the timeline. I think she was deeply impacted by the power of that experience, and she was really enthusiastic about what was possible, much more so than 15 years later.
That's true.
When she was saying, it's going to take much longer.
Yeah. Jim.
With reference to your remark about the World War II throwing a spanner in the works at that time, didn't Sri Aurobindo also say if the Allies hadn't prevailed, that would have set back evolution maybe 1,000 years?
Yeah. Oh, we're in a time like that right now. Mm-hmm. We have forces that can set us back 1,000 years. Mm-hmm.
But how can something throw a spanner in the works for the gods?
The only answer to that is to say that gods, in that sense, gods, they're not infallible. Because, see, it's like, this is all an evolution taking place. Sri Aurobindo and the mother are evolutionary beings. They're also seeing, as we were saying with the mother saying, I see this much, but not beyond. And the Sri Aurobindo has said things, a very interesting thing about that. He's saying, if we enter into the supermind and see something, in the return to the cosmic sphere, it is hidden. Because if I were to remember that will have an impact right away. You see? So only what is to have an impact is remembered. It's a play of forces. He's constantly saying. And that leads to what we are discussing, because, it's like we have our little lives which are full of problems, but the gods have big lives that are full of big problems.
But it is
also extremely encouraging to to see that we have a choice even now also, and that kind of is very encouraging because there could be multiple follies even in my surrender to the mother, right? The purity of thought, I can definitely say, how many instances I had that purity of thought or lack of purity of thought.
Yeah.
But what is consoling to me and encouraging to me is the fact that I still have the choice that I can make, and with the sense of surrender, there's a greater possibility for progress, which is really encouraging actually.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, John Robert.
This discussion right now brings me back to the question of celebrating the descent, or celebrating the evolution.
Yeah.
And I was remembering, of course, in I think it's in Savitri, where he talks about the reason for the whole thing is the adventure of consciousness and joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we mirror that in all our works of drama and literature and everything. We always have a conflict. We always have difficulty.
Yeah.
We have to have that. We can't enjoy it otherwise.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was just wondering if there's a greater joy that's descending at the same time as greater difficulty is descending.
Yeah, because that he uses the term unshadowed bliss, and this is exactly what you're saying about, as Sri Aurobindo puts it, every step of the progress is challenged. It's a struggle, it's every step is a challenge. Every step is a tremendous struggle. The struggle of life to appear. I mean, this is the thing about ontological evil. There is a power of resistance against any attempt of evolution of evolution of consciousness, and that's what we are seeing.
And that's also a divine power.
Yeah, it's a divine power to challenge the divine into life, into appearing.
It makes sense, doesn't it, that if we're at a period of maximum choice, that there's also maximum chaos.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like they would kind of go together.
Exactly.
But it also, from what you were saying and what my understanding is also, that it's going to take a critical mass of people choosing to surrender, choosing.
That's the thing. I mean, on the front of it, it looks really difficult. I mean, left to ourselves and the fact of, I'd even say a kind of, mass hypnosis of falsehood that is spreading across the earth right now, it looks very difficult. It's like people are just under the sway of a tremendous falsehood. But I mean, that's the thing about the supermind. One can never predict what's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, even internally, like the mother says, Sri Aurobindo works miracles in the mind. And during the time, I've talked to some people who've spoken about this. One of them I can mention, that was Kirit Joshi, who talked about the miracles that he's observed with Sri Aurobindo and the mother, working through the minds of people. So even during the Second World War, we know about this. That even speeches were given verbatim by some people that were being put into their minds. And so the action of Mother and Sri Aurobindo have not stopped. And, the action of the supermind has not stopped. And what will happen under these conditions, we don't know, but we can have faith that something is at work. It's not only the hostile forces that have covered the earth. There are other forces. I mean, and it's an unequal. I mean, it looks like a, you know, I wouldn't say I'd say that it's pretty even right now.
Actually, I see in the last 2-3 years, people have flocked to the temples a lot more. And it sounds as if like at the outset, everything sounds like a divine, you know, people are just queuing in the temples a lot and then singing bhajans and songs, and that's more prominent in the sort of the common, you know, social structure. And even in India, it's like everywhere leaders are all kind of, you know, talking about their own, you know, religious things, and even here in the US also something similar happening. But at the you know, places like Aurobindo Center, the visitors are a lot more lesser than, you know, places like temples where there are like thousands of people are kind of flocking around. And I mean, it's pretty confusing to kind of see that a little bit. But I think going back to what you mentioned, rather than worrying about some larger picture, it is better to kind of concentrate on one's own self, see how much we can surrender to the mother is probably what I think is an answer.
Yeah, that and to grow in consciousness, you know, to grow in consciousness. I think what you're talking about as a devotional movement can still be a blindness, you know, there's a lot of blindness. And it can actually, you know, I mean, it sounds hackneyed to repeat the phrase of Marx in these circles, but it isn't necessarily untrue that religion is the opium of the people. See, it's often large numbers of people who want to forget the decisions that they need to make right now that go to places like temples. It doesn't necessarily mean a progress. There doesn't necessarily have to be consciousness for that.
But we can also see it as the fact that these opposing forces are so strong now that, as I think you just mentioned, they're there because we're about to make a breakthrough. That the breakthrough is coming, and they are there to stop it dead in its tracks.
Yeah.
And if we, like you say, have the faith and work on ourselves, we can make the breakthrough together.
Yeah, you know, the mother has a long statement of this kind, and if I found it, it would be lovely to read at this point, where she's talking about
that they're going to wreak all the havoc possible.
No, you know, where she says that with the intensity of our aspiration, and you know, the worst may come. There may be even a cataclysm. But to some extent, we have achieved this in the past. And by the intensity of our aspiration, we can sort of leap light years ahead and avert the disaster, you know, something like that, she says. So I totally agree. I think what it points to and what we can do is to do work on ourselves and intensify the aspiration. Because it's there, you know, and if we call on it, it will act. First and foremost, it will act in our lives, you know, because each one of us is a universe. We are connected with everything else. And whatever comes into the ambit of our life, we have an effect on the world in that way. But even more than that, it empowers a larger possibility with every individual who does their own inner work and calls on that possibility, the aspiration for the divine. Yes, Margaret?
This is a very powerful place that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I just want to say also, I think we all struggle with, oh my God, the outer just seems so intense. But I will say this, I think it's an important point about the aspiration. Whenever I can see the distraction of the outer, and I really call for help, and I really aspire, I'm really met with help. And I think that if we can mirror that to one another, that like you were saying earlier about how it's really difficult, but, like there's, to me, the help is the but.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Even in yoga also, like when you start, you are given a lot of grace,
Yeah.
and then you are thrown, like, now you have to really learn how to do it yourself,
Yeah.
like childhood and then adulthood type, growing up.
Yeah.
I just mean that I do believe that Mother and Sri Aurobindo are encouraging us to do the work
Yeah.
for lots of reasons, but I think if you once feel that tangibleness of the help, that your aspiration is met,
Yeah.
that'll keep us, like you say, just keep us at it and not get discouraged.
True.
You have to read some Savitri before we close.
Yeah.
You have to.
The closing passage.
Yeah, we'll read the adoration of the Divine Mother. This is page 312 in the latest edition.
It's
And-
332.
Okay. So this is the part that goes, it's Ashwapati's, the adoration of the mother. It's a little after the beginning. It's sort of powerful from the very beginning, but I'm reading a little bit from inside. Even while he stood on being's naked edge, and all the passion of his seeking soul, and all the passion and seeking of his soul faced their extinction in some featureless vast, the presence he yearned for suddenly drew close. Across the silence of the ultimate calm, out of a marvelous transcendence's core, a body of wonder and translucency, as if a sweet mystic summary of herself, escaping into the original bliss, had come, enlarged out of eternity. Someone came, infinite and absolute. He's about to be wiped out. Somebody comes. A being of wisdom, power, and delight. Even as a mother draws her child to her arms, took to her breast nature and world and soul. Abolishing the signless emptiness, breaking the vacancy and voiceless hush, piercing the limitless unknowable, into the liberty of the motionless depths, a beautiful and felicitous lustre stole. The power, the light, the bliss no word can speak, imaged itself in a surprising beam and built a golden passage to his heart. Touching through him all longing, sentient things. A moment's sweetness of the all-beautiful cancelled the vanity of the cosmic world. A nature throbbing with a heart divine was felt in the unconscious universe. It made the breath a happy mystery, a love that bore the cross of pain with joy. You demonized the sorrow of the world, made happy the weight of long, unending time, the secret caught of God's felicity. Affirming in life a hidden ecstasy, it held the spirit to its miraculous course. Carrying immortal values to the hours, it justified the labor of the suns. For one was there, supreme behind the God. A mother might brooded upon the world. A consciousness revealed its marvelous front, transcending all that is, denying none. Imperishable above our fallen heads, he felt a rapturous and unstumbling force. And move forward to the towards the last part. At the head she stands of birth and toil and fate. In their slow round, the cycles turn to her call. Alone her hands can change time's dragon pace. Hers is the mystery the night conceals. The spirit's alchemist energy is hers. She is the golden bridge, the wonderful fire. The luminous heart of the unknown is she, a power of silence in the depths of God. She is the force, the inevitable word, the magnet of our difficult ascent, the sun from which we kindle all our suns, the light that leans from the unrealized fasts, the joy that beckons from the impossible, the might of all that never yet came down. All nature dumbly calls to her alone to heal with her feet the aching throb of life and break the seals on the dim soul of man and kindle her fire in the closed heart of things. All here shall be one day her sweetness's home. All contraries prepare her harmony. Towards her our knowledge climbs, our passion gropes. In her miraculous rapture we shall dwell. Her clasp shall turn to ecstasy our pain. Our life, our self, shall be one self with all through her. In her confirmed, because transformed in her, our life shall find in its fulfilled response above the boundless hushed beatitudes, below the wonder of the embrace divine. This, known as in a thunder flash of God, the rapture of things eternal filled his limbs. Amazement fell upon his ravished sense. His spirit was caught in her intolerant flame. Once seen, his heart acknowledged only her. Only a hunger of infinite bliss was left. All aims in her were lost, then found in her. His base was gathered to one pointing spire.
Maybe we can, when you read it, it's like in all of our conversations, all contraries prepare for harmony.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
His refers to Aurobindo here.
Yeah. 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 This is what Ashwapati beholds when he, reaches the borders of the unknowable, and it's an entire experience. As he says, this known as in a thunder flash of God. It's a momentary experience. You see, he encounters this in this sort of moment of revelation. We can have a meditation.